Good morning, and welcome to Brewin on Broad Street, a series focused on advice for entrepreneurs by Star Business Advisors. Today I'm joined by Adam McGowan. Adam is a great friend and outstanding consultant for startups, CEOs, founders, and their investors. I know over the past 12 years, hundreds of ventures, thousands of entrepreneurs have benefited from your advice and guidance. I want to know how you do what you do.
Well, for starters, thanks so much for having me, Steve. I really appreciate it. I define a startup as a venture that is facing big consequences and lots of uncertainty, and they're doing it with limited resources. So for the leaders of those ventures, what I do is I help them to narrow their focus, to make the best possible decisions, and then execute on them with greater success and less risk. And I specialize in ventures that are raising funds, developing a product, or trying to achieve early growth.
Thank you for being here.
It's my pleasure, Steve.
Adam, I know that fundraising is top of mind for so many entrepreneurs. What advice do you have for them as they pitch for early funds?
Sure, well, I think that for a young venture trying to raise early money, the most important thing they need to do is nail the opening of their pitch. And to do it, I think you need to use what I call the 3 S's. So it's story, solution, and scale. So open with story. What I mean here is that you've got to describe the problem from the point of view of a single individual and do it with a ton of detail, right? Make it real, make the audience feel it. And then you follow with solution. So solution is where you actually talk about, again, in detail, how you're going to solve that problem you just laid out in the story. Now, word of caution, this is where I want people to resist the urge to describe all the amazing things that their startups do, because there's plenty of time for that later. But then the third step is scale, right? So you've set the scene, but now you've got to talk about how do you turn a solution into a business. And to do that, you bring in a bunch of other details. This is where we talk about target markets, we talk about revenue models, we talk about team composition, we talk about the competition, all the things that you traditionally see in a pitch. But I advise my clients to practice this early and actually do it well before you need to raise money, because yes, it will make your pitching better, but it has a bigger benefit than that. It highlights aspects of the business that could use improvement, and it makes you much more fundable.
And with that advice, they increase their odds of success.
I think they do.
I know over the past 12 years, hundreds of ventures, thousands of entrepreneurs have benefited from your advice and guidance. I want to know how you do what you do.
Well, for starters, thanks so much for having me, Steve. I really appreciate it. I define a startup as a venture that is facing big consequences and lots of uncertainty, and they're doing it with limited resources. So for the leaders of those ventures, what I do is I help them to narrow their focus, to make the best possible decisions, and then execute on them with greater success and less risk. And I specialize in ventures that are raising funds, developing a product, or trying to achieve early growth.
Thank you for being here.
It's my pleasure, Steve.
Adam, I'm constantly hearing inspiring ideas from entrepreneurs, but we both know the journey from big idea to successful business isn't easy. What advice do you have for entrepreneurs trying to make that big leap?
Steve, I think the moment you described is probably the biggest source of frustration that I see for entrepreneurs. So imagine a founder is just consumed by this amazing idea. They've gotten feedback, they've built it, and then they launch it. And then very little happens. The customers don't come, and the founder cannot figure out why. I think this problem is so common and it's so complex. I actually built an entire methodology around it to attack it head on. I call it the MAP method, and it stands for Market Advantage Proof. Now, that's too big of a topic for today. So if I could give one piece of advice, I'd say start with the P, proof. So by definition, if you've got a new big idea, there's aspects of it that have never been done before. And so that means founders have to make a ton of assumptions. Is a market going to engage with us? Are they going to want to buy? What are they willing to pay? And so on. But so often, we treat assumptions as if they were facts. And then we don't adjust until well after things have gone south, they went off the rails. So my advice is to do the opposite. Treat everything like an assumption at first. And then the job is to prove them true. Hypothesize, test, experiment, and learn. And if you get stuck, call me. I am happy to share more about the MAP method.
And proof equals credibility.
I think it does.
Thanks for that advice. I want to know how you do what you do.
I define a startup as a venture that is facing big consequences and lots of uncertainty, and they're doing it with limited resources. So for the leaders of those ventures, what I do is I help them to narrow their focus, to make the best possible decisions, and then execute on them with greater success and less risk. And I specialize in ventures that are raising funds, developing a product, or trying to achieve early growth.
Thank you for being here.
It's my pleasure, Steve.
Adam, we both know that startup leaders are constantly faced with challenging decisions. What advice do you have to help entrepreneurs consistently make great decisions for their ventures?
Well, Steve, I like to use this rule of thumb, and I call it ICE, I-C-E. It stands for investment, cash flow, and earnings. And I think it's important because these elements are the lifeblood of a venture. And for startups, without them, I'm not sure you start, and you definitely aren't going to scale. And I can explain to you how it works. So let's imagine you have a relatively simple decision to make. Two options, A and B. Well, first you ask the question, how do these two options compare when it comes to securing the capital I need for my business, to secure investment? And then second, you ask the question, well, what about cash flow? How do these two options compare when it comes to generating more sales, or keeping my costs down, or maybe collecting revenue sooner, or being able to pay bills later? And then lastly, the real question is, what do each of these options mean for the path to profitability of the venture? To be able to actually generate earnings, and when? Now, the answers to none of these questions are easy. They require analysis, research, and frankly, some strategic guessing. And that's actually why decision strategy is what consumes so much of my consulting work. But applying ICE has got a huge advantage. It strips away the noise. It suggests the metrics that don't matter. You can leave them aside, and it helps you to strip away those options that don't improve investment, that don't improve cash flow, that don't improve earnings. So this alone isn't going to make any decisions easy to make, but I think it makes them clearer, faster, and more effective.
And reducing the noise increases the probability of success.
That's what I tend to see, yes.
Thanks, Adam.
Thanks, Steve.
Adam, thanks for joining me today. And thank you as we continue brewing on Broad Street.